Picture this. You walk into an estate auction on a slow Saturday morning. Maybe you need a bookshelf, maybe you're just browsing. You place a casual bid on an old wooden desk because it looks nice. You load it into your truck, you bring it home, you set it up in your living room, and then you find $100,000 hidden inside it. This isn't fiction. This isn't a movie script. This is exactly what happened to a married couple in California in 2018. And what they did next turned their accidental windfall into one of the most talked about money stories of the year. Because here's the thing, finding money is one thing. But what do you do when the amount is so large that keeping quiet could destroy your life? Stay with me, because this story gets real fast. The couple didn't wake up that morning thinking their lives were about to change. They weren't treasure hunters. They weren't flipping furniture for profit. They were just two ordinary people who liked vintage pieces and thought an estate auction might be a fun way to spend a Saturday. Estate auctions are strange places. You're bidding on the remnants of someone's entire life. Furniture that held family dinners, books that were read on quiet evenings, closets that were opened 10,000 times. Everything must go. The desk caught their eye because it was solid, real wood, craftsmanship you don't see anymore. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't expensive by auction standards. It was just a desk, a place to put a laptop, a spot to pay bills. They placed their bid. No one else seemed particularly interested. The auctioneer's hammer came down, sold. They loaded it into their vehicle and drove it home. Another piece of furniture, another Saturday errand, nothing special. But that desk had been keeping a secret for years. Here's where it gets interesting. The couple didn't discover the money right away. They brought the desk inside. They positioned it in the room. They admired the lines, the weight, the feel of real craftsmanship. And then one of them started examining it more closely. Old furniture sometimes has quirks, hidden drawers, false backs, little compartments that craftsmen built into pieces decades ago. It was part of the design language of an earlier era, a time when people valued secrecy, privacy, a place to tuck away what mattered most. This desk had compartments, multiple compartments. And they weren't empty. Imagine sliding your hand into a hidden space and feeling paper. Not one bill, not a loose 20, stacks, thick stacks, bundled carefully, stored deliberately. Old bills that had been placed there years ago by someone who thought they were safe. The couple pulled out the first stack, then another, then another. The total came to approximately $100,000 in cash. Think about that number for a second. Not 1,000, not 10,000, $100,000. Hidden in a piece of furniture they just bought for a fraction of that amount at an estate auction. The odds of stumbling into something like this, astronomically low. You could attend auctions your entire life and never find a single hidden dollar. But probability doesn't care about fairness. It doesn't care about likelihood. Sometimes the universe just drops a briefcase of cash into your lap while you're examining the joinery on an old desk. And that's when the real story begins. Here's what most people don't understand about finding large sums of money. The first emotion isn't joy, it's panic, because $100,000 in cash raises questions. Big questions, questions that don't have easy answers. Where did this come from? Who put it there? Why was it hidden? Is someone looking for it? Is this legal to keep? What if the family didn't know? What if they did know and want it back? What if you keep it and someone finds out? Picture the couple standing in their living room. Stacks of old bills spread across the desk. The same desk they'd been excited about an hour ago. Now it felt like evidence, like a trap, like something that could unravel their entire lives if they made the wrong move. Because here's the brutal truth. In situations like this, doing the right thing and doing the smart thing aren't always the same. And doing the wrong thing can haunt you forever. They had options. They could have stayed silent, taken the cash, deposited it slowly over time in small amounts that wouldn't trigger bank alerts, paid off debt, funded dreams, kept the windfall as a secret between two people and four walls. But they didn't. They contacted authorities. Now imagine making that call. Imagine dialing the number knowing you're about to give up a life-changing amount of money. Knowing that the moment you speak the words out loud, the cash stops being yours and starts being evidence in someone else's investigation. That takes something most people don't have. It takes character, it takes the long view, it takes the belief that the right choice matters more than the convenient choice. And that decision set everything else in motion. Once the authorities were involved, the story stopped being private. News outlets picked it up. Major U.S. media ran the story. Headlines spread across the country. The couple who found $100,000 in a desk. The couple who did the right thing. Suddenly their names were out there. Their choice was public. Their windfall was a news story, and that brought attention. The kind of attention that changes how people look at you, how they treat you, how they think about you when you're not in the room. But here's the part that matters. The couple worked with authorities to determine the rightful owner. The cash wasn't random. It belonged to someone. Or more accurately, it belonged to a family connected to the estate. The desk had come from someone's life, someone's home. Someone who had hidden that money for reasons we'll never fully know. The couple returned the majority of the cash to the rightful family. Read that again. They gave it back. Not because they were forced to, not because they had no choice, but because it was the right thing to do, because someone else had earned that money, saved it, hidden it, and lost it through circumstances beyond their control. In accordance with local regulations, the couple received a smaller portion as a lawful reward. The exact amount wasn't disclosed, but it was a fraction of the total, a finder's fee. A thank you for honesty in a world where honesty isn't always rewarded. Think about what that means. They went from 0 to 100,000 to something much smaller, all within a matter of weeks. The emotional roller coaster of that experience is hard to overstate, but they could sleep at night. They could look at themselves in the mirror. They could tell the story without shame or fear or the constant anxiety of waiting for a knock on the door. And that's worth something too. Let's talk about what this story teaches us, because there are real lessons here, practical lessons, the kind that matter when probability throws you a curveball. First lesson: if you find money, large sums of money, the legal and ethical path is almost always the right path, not because it feels good in the moment, but because the alternative can destroy you. Keeping found money that doesn't belong to you creates a trap. You can't deposit it normally without raising red flags. Banks report large cash deposits. The IRS asks questions. Suddenly you're structuring deposits to avoid detection, which is itself a federal crime. You're living a double life. You're carrying a secret that gets heavier every single day. And if the rightful owner ever discovers what happened, if the estate family finds out their hidden savings ended up in your hands, you're facing civil suits, criminal charges, public shame, the loss of everything you built with that money and everything you had before it. The stress alone isn't worth it. Imagine waking up every day wondering if today is the day it all falls apart. Imagine every unexpected phone call sending your heart racing. Imagine the weight of that secret crushing every good moment because you know it's built on something wrong. The couple in this story avoided all of that by making one hard choice, by choosing integrity over convenience, by understanding that some money costs more than it's worth. There's another layer here too: privacy. Once you involve authorities, once the story goes public, your life changes. People know your name. People have opinions about your choices. You lose the quiet anonymity that most of us take for granted. But the couple accepted that trade because the alternative was worse. And that's wisdom. That's understanding the real cost of decisions. If you ever find yourself in a situation like this, the path is clear. Contact authorities, work with them to find the rightful owner, follow the legal process, accept the outcome, and walk away with your integrity intact. Because that's the only version of this story where you actually win. Here's the second lesson. And this one's about how we think about windfalls, how we fantasize about sudden money, how we imagine that one perfect accident that changes everything. We all do it. We see a story like this and think, what if? What if I bought that desk? What if I found that cash? What would I do with $100,000? And that fantasy is dangerous because it makes us believe that windfalls are solutions, that sudden money fixes problems, that one lucky break is all we need. But real financial stability doesn't come from accidents. It comes from decisions, small decisions, daily decisions, choices that compound over time, saving a little, spending less than you earn, building an emergency fund, paying down debt, investing for the long term. The couple in this story didn't get rich from the desk. They got a small reward, a fraction, and then they went back to their regular lives, because that's how life actually works. Windfalls are rare. Windfalls are unpredictable. Windfalls are not a plan. There's another truth here about found money. Even when you keep it legally, it rarely transforms your life the way you think it will. Studies show that people who receive sudden windfalls, lottery winners, inheritance recipients, often end up in the same financial position or worse within a few years, because they didn't build the habits that sustain wealth. They didn't develop the discipline that protects money over time. The couple made a choice that protected them from that trap. They didn't treat the windfall as the answer to all their problems. They didn't build a fantasy life around money that was never really theirs. They stayed grounded. They stayed ethical. They stayed smart. And that's the lesson. Don't wait for an accident to change your financial life. Don't buy furniture hoping there's cash inside. Don't build your future on the hope of stumbling into something extraordinary. Build it on what you can control. Your income, your spending, your choices, your discipline, your patience. Because those things, boring as they sound, are the only reliable path to financial security. The desk story is fun. It's exciting. It's unbelievable. But it's not a strategy. It's not a plan. It's a one-in-a-million accident that happened to two people who did the right thing with it. Be inspired by their character. Learn from their choices. But don't wait for your own hidden compartment to appear, because it probably never will. So here's where we are. A married couple in California walked into an estate auction in 2018 looking for furniture. They walked out with a desk. They brought it home. They found $100,000 hidden inside. And then they gave most of it back. That's the story. That's the whole thing, an accident, a choice. A lesson in integrity that most of us will never have to face, but all of us can learn from. Think about the weight of that decision. Think about standing in your living room with stacks of cash and choosing the harder path. Choosing honesty when no one would have known. Choosing transparency when secrecy was easier. Choosing the long view when the short view was so tempting. That's character. That's who you want to be when probability puts you to the test, because here's the final truth. Life will test you, maybe not with $100,000 in a desk, but with something, a found wallet, an overpayment, a mistake in your favor, a moment where doing the right thing costs you something real, and in those moments you find out who you are. The California couple found out, and they passed. They made the hard choice. They contacted authorities. They worked to find the rightful owner. They returned the money. They accepted a smaller reward. They told their story, and they walked away knowing they did right. That's the win. That's the real windfall, not the cash, but the knowledge that when it mattered, they chose integrity. And that's worth more than any hidden compartment could ever hold. If you found this story as unbelievable as I did, do me a favor. Hit that like button right now. Subscribe to the channel so you never miss another true story of accidental windfalls. And share this video with a friend who loves stories that restore your faith in people making the right choice. Let me leave you with this. If you found $100,000 hidden in something you just bought, what would you do first with that money?